Today, I'm going to be talking to you about my good state of, just roll the damn clip.
Florida Democrats are trying to figure out what went wrong last night. Some are calling for a change of state party leadership after the president didn't just win the state of Florida, he did it by a larger margin than 2016.
I mean, obviously, what we did not work. There's not going to be any way to deny that. We can't sit here and act like we did an amazing job when Florida went red.
Monday, we're going to have a red wave, it's called, the red wave.
So the 2020 election is now over. Despite losing the White House, Republicans won very big in congressional and Senate races all across the country. Take a look at North Dakota, for instance, where a Republican state senator won who had died a month earlier. Colin Sam Seaborn, I guess. And for those who don't get that reference or politics, this is like if LeBron lost to Wilt Chamberlain. Step up your game, LeBron. But we can see this Cirque du Soleil in Florida as well. Not only did Trump win, but Republicans won 3 open seats and beat 2 incumbent Democrats. But for those city folk who live in Florida, you're wondering what the hell happened. We represent most of the population. Why wasn't it blue like the cities were? And we have some pretty awesome cities. We got Tampa, we got Orlando, we got Miami, we got Newport. Wait, who put that up there? Anyways, people don't understand the fact that Florida is very divided. For my Desis, Florida is basically like India. Not only do you have a north and a south that are fundamentally different, but you got other small areas that have different ethnicities, languages, and values. And one Trump-hugging incompetent leader, of course. But despite the divide in our state, the Republican Party has predominantly had power for the last 20 years on the governorship, the Florida House, and the Florida Senate, despite there being more registered Democrats constantly throughout the Republican reign. So I want to talk to you today about why Florida has been so red and what is the future of the Sunshine State. And so with the Republican Party, it's important to understand their strategy. And I'm going to talk to you today about 2 of them, the law and the rhetoric. An example of the law was a law passed by the governor that said that although felons were allowed to vote, they could not unless they paid all of the necessary fines. So in more other words, it was a poll tax. Not only could thousands of impoverished felons not pay this, but many of these taxes or many of these fees couldn't even be calculated because of how long ago they were. And so some estimates say that over 1.5 million felons had trouble voting. And so adding on to this was the redrawing of lines that helped the Florida Senate and House stay in Republicans' favor, and they can do this because they've had power for the past 20 years. But to be more fair, none of this is even possible without the Republicans getting votes. And the strategy with that is good old socialism.
Biden is just a Trojan horse for socialism. He's a Trojan horse. He has no clue.
Branding a Democratic candidate as socialist is as old as the Cold War. But with the rise of democratic socialism, Republicans are doubling down on that attack.
Trump's re-election narrative centers on false claims that Biden is anti-police and supports socialism. That rhetoric has hit a nerve among exiles in Miami who have been flooded with political ads and misinformation.
Biden ha dejado clarísimo que él es la marioneta de los chavistas.
If everybody's saying it, then it must be true.
Many experts say that Florida Hispanic population, which is predominantly Cuban, voted Republican because of this socialist rhetoric, which reminds them of Castro. And so here's the thing. These tactics weren't always originally Trump's, as we've seen. This has been in the American society since like the 1980s. Even Voldemort himself, Rick Scott, used this against Bill Nelson in 2018. And it works to convince their base. It really does. But when we talked to historian Heather Cox Richardson, she told us the Democratic Party has never stood for actual socialism. But my point is that imagine how Democrats feel about this. Is that regardless of what they say or what they do, they are always going to be viewed as the Socialist Party. Republicans are basically playing a game of Among Us and calling the Democrats sus or socialist. And they're voting them out because they aren't doing their task, even though they literally can't. Let me explain this real quick. Since the Republican Party's had full control of Florida politics, Democrats have not, I can't talk about their policy failures, but their failure to get in position to. So this socialism rhetoric has affected Democrats so much that they can't even unify. They're divided between centrist and moderates and progressives. And they blame each other for their losses. And adding on to this is the fact that the Democratic Party in general, as we've discussed earlier on in the show, doesn't fund their local candidates well, especially progressive candidates. But the fact of the matter is, many of these progressive ideals may actually help the American people. And they have been adopted by both parties in the past. President Eisenhower, for instance, a firm believer in the government providing basic needs for its citizens like a livable wage and health care. Historically, these are not radical or one-sided. Florida progressives like Rep. Ana Escamani, who has been on a show a couple of times, has said to our viewers that they are not socialist, but people who support working class Americans and working class solutions. And that is why in her election, Rep. Ana won 2 Republican precincts that were predominantly went to Trump with 55% or plus. She believes the Democratic Party needs systematic change that supports local candidates and ideas that everybody can relate to. No amount of extra money or Biden playing Despacito will get Florida leadership back. And so what's the consequence of all of this? As the Democrats figure out really who they are, the Republicans in the past 20 years have created Florida into the economic state it is today, with one of the largest economies with its businesses and tourism. The GDP can be compared to other countries, for that matter. Quite frankly, they've made it like Disney World. On the outside, it's perfect. But once you see Cinderella without her wig, smoking a cigarette, things won't be the same. Let me explain. Florida and other areas, like K-12 education, ranks 27th. Healthcare, 41. Has the 3rd highest prison population, 35 to 38 economic opportunity, and one of the worst in climate change protectors. So here's the thing. The story of Florida's failures isn't about businesses. It's about the people who work there. For instance, when the pandemic started, Florida had one of the worst unemployment responses out of all the states. First off, they only gave, till this day, they still do, $275 per week to its citizens. They're basically handing out universal passes. The Florida unemployment system crashed so many times and did not work that in between March and April, only 1% of eligible people got their benefits. And this website literally had a limit on how many people could be on it and would close when people would finish up a normal application. Florida Virtual School was better than this, man. Come on now. And in addition to this, the Scott administration drastically cut public health programs, resulting in Florida hospitals to be unprepared for the pandemic back in March and are still suffering today. And so instead of taking a more active approach to help its citizens, Governor DeSantis decided to listen to the magic conch shell and did nothing. But I'm not insulting him. That was actually the plan. Even today, with rising cases all over Florida, he wants to go ahead and reopen the economy. This was the same guy who wanted to reopen schools back in May. It's his philosophy. Oh, but you're thinking, Raheem, what do you mean we have to open the economy, you socialist? You're right. But the argument here is the fact that this is not between a closed versus an open economy. It's an open economy with CDC guidelines, plexiglasses, mask mandates, more social distancing, versus an open economy which gives businesses and people the option to do these things. And the result of one of these actions has caused 750,000 cases and 48,000 deaths. Florida politicians, this is their biggest failure, the lack of a social safety net, which the economy doesn't provide for. For instance, departments serving at least 500,000 residents on average in 2019 spent $29 per person, compared with $90 per person in departments serving 50,000 or less. This is the story of Florida. We invest in business and not people. And so on one side, you got the Democratic Party, who is like that, that nerdy kid in high school nobody really likes and spread those socialist rumors about them. Okay, see, that's just not funny. And then you got the Republican Party, who's like that super senior who never really leaves, right? He's always there, controls things, but he's cool because he drives his economy car. What more can he do? And so the politics of Florida, at the end of the day, comes down to you, as it always is. In 2 years, there's another election, please don't forget, that decides our senator and governor. And I know everybody is going to say that, oh, you always say this. But the case of Florida is real. We literally could have changed the outcome of the 2000 election. Our last 3 governor races, on average, ended up with 50,000 votes. That's how much votes it was decided by. And so the question is, 2 years from now, who's going to show up to the polls? And what state do Floridians want it to be? Thank you.